Alive? Were you alive and
Okay.
everything else? Alright, you're alive.
Alright.
Tell us your name.
Ashley Franklin. Am I
And-
looking into a
So you
specific one? Just
doesn't
looking.
matter. You
chatting?
can either look at them or look at
Okay,
me or look at
okay.
Billy or John.
We'll look at you.
How many children have you got?
3.
How old are they all?
6, 3, and 4 months.
Oh, they're tiny.
Yeah.
And of those, which ones are vaccinated and which ones are not?
My 6-year-old and my 3-year-old are partially vaccinated, and the new one is vax-free.
Completely no vitamin K?
Never.
Nothing?
Mm-mm.
Interesting. So, your first 2 injured in any way?
Yes.
Okay, talk to us about it.
Well, my son is 6 years old, and when he was born with a cleft palate, so we already had issues with that. But whenever we first started going to his doctor appointments and they gave him his first vaccinations, they just told me it was normal. High fevers were very normal, and just suggested Tylenol with the high fevers. And being the first time mom and thinking the doctors knew everything, that's what I did. And I just had a gut-wrenching feeling. I just felt sick to my stomach over it. I just felt like something wasn't right about it. And so I would cancel doctor's appointments, and then when I would go back, I would talk to them about spacing out the vaccines, because they were like, well, we can do this for you, because I would express my concerns. When I was pregnant, I was on an antidepressant because of a car accident that I had, and the doctor was telling me he was okay, like, because I had fear of that. Well, then he was born with a cleft palate through that. So I think it stems back to knowing that something's not right here, and I think God set that up. And then after one of his vaccinations, we had about 3 days later, he wheezing really bad, high fevers. He couldn't breathe, and my husband's like, I was up freaking out, and he was telling me, no, it's okay, he'll be okay. And I just knew something was wrong, so we took him to the hospital, and they rushed us in an ambulance to Vanderbilt Children's Hospital, and he almost had respiratory heart failure. And it made me sick to my stomach. And I would go to the doctors, I would talk to them about vaccinations. They would basically bully me, tell me that this wasn't causing this. And just a mother's intuition, I really feel like the Holy Spirit prompted me to tell me, like, no, something's not right here. And so I stopped going to appointments. There was about a 1.5 year gap that he didn't have vaccinations. He's about 1.5, probably his last one. And then when I had his sister when he was 3, I took her back to her first visit, her second visit, and they bullied me, and they found out that he was so behind on the vaccinations. They bullied me into basically giving him one and giving her one, and I left there in tears, and I never went back.
Talk to me about the bullying. What are we talking about, so you can warn other parents of the level that goes on?
The level that goes on is expressing concern, and immediately their demeanor changes. The doctors are immediately just like, oh, I feel like there's a label on people who don't vaccinate, and I feel like they immediately change from being nice, if they are, because they're not very intimate with you about your child. It's just strictly business, when your children's health shouldn't be that way, and they should be able to communicate with you without on a level basis, where it's a personal basis, instead of you're just another number. And the minute that they find out that you're hesitant about vaccines, they are just shoving fear down your throat of what's going to happen if you don't do this, and telling me that all the fear, just immediately shutting me down. And for me, I'm a type of person who kind of is like a deer in headlights. Like, I've known inside that something's not right, but the minute they're shutting me down, I'm like, I don't have anything when you're not knowledgeable, you don't have very many things to say back. But I knew that it wasn't right, and I knew I'd had a nurse plant a seed. When my son was sick and going to Vanderbilt, she planted a seed that her son, telling me about his experience with his vaccine injury, and she started, and then Janon came and planted a seed for me. Different people were coming in and planting seeds, and I just knew that this isn't what we needed to do. I knew my child, I could tell in his eyes, after one of his vaccinations, and he just started having fevers. He just had a glazed look over his face, and you know, like they say, you don't know when your child is so young, but when you're with your baby every single day, you know. And now, ever since that, he's 6 now, and he has a high, whenever he's given like food dyes or colorings or preservatives, artificial things, it's like he's on crack. He spins around, he will be on the floor just going crazy. And I homeschool him, so sitting down and talking to him, sometimes he's always doing this, pulling on his shirt and biting on it, putting his shirt over he can't stand still and like look at me. Sometimes in a lot of those days, I notice it's when he has sugar, like those things are triggered because of the vaccines. He gets random rashes on his stomach. He gets that we don't know where they're from. There's different things that I know that he has that his other siblings don't, that is from the vaccinations, that you just know as a parent that all these weird things that are popping up, he's the only child that would get sick, until we decided to start changing our diet and changing the way that we heal from the inside. That is when I started seeing difference in him. Whenever I started taking out all the different things that was causing him to trigger, because it seemed like it would really, like if he goes to a grandparent's house and they load him up with junk and things like that, it's unusual how hyper he gets, and he can't focus. Even when I don't, we eat fairly clean at our house, but sitting down and talking to him and doing school with him, there's times that he just can't focus. He can't even look me in the eyes at times because he's so hyper, and I know that it's from a vaccine.
So then tell me about your baby, unvaccinated, no vaccines.
No, her name is Evangeline.
And so nothing when you're pregnant. Did you get any aggravation for not vaccinating your baby?
No, I actually had very little prenatal care with her because of insurance things, and I didn't even know up until about 2 weeks before I had her where I was going to have her or who was going to take her, because I had to have 2 C-sections with the other 2, and because of my injuries with my spine and things from a car accident that I had. And this little girl is named Evangeline Faith, and God used her to pull me in close, and she was I feel like God formed a bubble around her where she couldn't feel the stress or anything that we were going through, but I feel like it was for a purpose. I didn't have any of the glucose testing, nothing. I did end up having a C-section the 2 weeks before I had her. Vanderbilt midwives, I got in there. I do not suggest going to Vanderbilt. They kept trying to force vaccinations, and I had my birth plan out, and I stuck to it, and we got out of there as quick as possible. She doesn't go to a pediatrician. She goes to Dr. Liz and Dr. Mark. She's had her 2-week chiropractic adjustment and her 2-month, and now our children, that is their doctors, and we are just getting a better quality of life as much as we possibly can after everything that they've been through and injected with.
So what's your recommendations for the young parent?
To be brave. If you have that feeling inside you that I know that I had, and I had everybody pushing against me. My husband wasn't even on board at first. My mother-in-law wasn't on board, and those things can be very overwhelming, and they can be intimidating. A lot of my friends weren't even on board when I started talking about these things, and I was kind of like ignorance on fire at first. I was so mad at what it was doing to my child that I was just sharing every single thing about it. And I had people block me on social media, family talk about me, family that wouldn't even bring their kids to my wedding because our kids were unvaccinated. But that's okay, because our children are worth it. And if you have that feeling inside of you, trust that feeling. Trust it, because I feel like that's the Holy Spirit. I feel like that's God telling you, I don't make any mistakes. Don't put this into your child. Like, that is exactly how I felt. And looking back, it's just a beautiful thing, because I can see how He sent these people in to plant seeds inside and tell me about it. And I wasn't the most knowledgeable person about it. And even now when I read a ton of it, but it still doesn't always retain, because I just have different anxieties and things about speaking, and so it's hard for me to reiterate that to people. But one-on-one, I really try to build relationships and plant seeds in a loving and compassionate way. And something that I tell people is you can always get the vaccine later, but you can't undo it. So if you have any fear, or if you have any feelings or just questions, take that time, because your child is worth it. Your child is absolutely worth it. Their health is worth it. Their quality of life is worth it. And I look at my oldest son, and sometimes it just breaks my heart that I didn't know better then, but I know better now. And so it's not about being angry or being on one side or the other. It's about doing we all want what's best for our children. And so the best advice I can give you is do your research, reach out to people who know what they're talking about, and trust God, because He doesn't make any mistakes. He doesn't. Our bodies are magnificent in healing themselves and getting nutrition and just making sure that you are a powerhouse, that you can take care of your bodies. My children have not had over-the-counter medicine in 3 years, and they are the healthiest that they've ever been, because I made mistakes, but I learned, and now I know better, and so I do better.
Well said. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Anything else you want to add to this?
That's it.
You sure?
Yeah.